And yo, what's outside is within. The mind regulates the hand that masters the pen. The pen is mightier than the sword, but the tongue is mightier still. The stargate to the mind's revealed. The vortex.
Alright, peace everybody. Cyclonius, host for the Verbal Vortex, and we've got another amazing show for you. My special guest, can you talk to the people, let them know who you be?
Peace. I be the Force, one half of Uhuru, representing the hip hop movement, Ronin affiliate, and King of the Beats co-owner with Prick Kelsey, and just all-round UK hip hop purist. Pow pow!
And bro, you know, it's amazing to have you on my platform. In my eyes, you're a pioneer for the scene, and this is something for us to give you your flowers in the present form, and just to show you from MC to MC, producer to producer, all of that we appreciate what you're doing and all that good
Respect
stuff.
and love, man. That's dope.
All right.
That's dope.
So my first question to you, yeah, it delves into the realm of inspiration.
Yeah.
What inspired you to create Setting Standards? Was it 4 now? Setting Standards
so we got 4 volumes, yeah.
And how does it differ from the previous installments in that franchise?
Good question. Okay, so it's a long thing. It's a long drawn out process, but basically Setting Standards started in about, oh man, I was working for Itch FM. I had a show on Itch FM, and I was playing a lot of UK and American music, and there was a lot of artists that I was really feeling. But because I'm a purist and I'm so hard-headed, I felt like some of the artists weren't consistent enough for me. Like, I was playing songs and then I was finding it hard to play other songs of theirs every week, right? So I started using acapellas and putting my own beats on some of those artists and playing it in the shows. And then artists was contacting me saying, I love what you did there. And that kind of led a bridge for me to say, look, I'd love to work with you. Why don't we just do some music together? Right? And that's basically how it started. I just wanted to have songs of my own production to put in my radio show in between all the other stuff.
Yeah.
Because as I said to you, like I don't know, I've been producing for a long time. I know that I have my own sound, and whenever you listen to my music, it's the sound, you're gonna get that sound. So I wanted to have that continuous sound through my radio shows, like it was an album that I had made. So that's what I was doing every month, and that's basically how it started. So it was through working at Itch FM. I wanted extra songs to go on the radio show, and then before you knew it, I had like joints with Double Edge, I had joints with yourself, Point Black had done joints with me. I met G-Bag through doing Itch FM. I met J-Man through doing Itch FM. And it's funny because J-Man, I did the Itch FM shows with a brother of mine, another UK hip-hop legend, a guy called MCB, who used to be involved in Tim Westwood's radio show back long time when Westwood was actually relevant, you know what I mean? He was also in a group called Trouble. They did a song called I Get Hype on Justice label, which is like one of the first UK hip hop, you know, London Posse, Trouble. It was a Westwood label, but Trouble are like Dingwall's days when Ultramagnetic was at Dingwall's and when Westwood was at Dingwall's and hip hop was at its vibrant most. Like Trouble was one of the groups, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he did the show with me, and he used to feed me a lot of music because he had this thing called People Under Pressure music filter, and he used to get me all the American stuff that I hadn't heard, and give me it for the show. So why did I get onto that? Basically, yeah, so I was doing the show with him on Itch FM. We did that, and then I met J-Man through People Under Pressure music because he said to me, yo, you need to check out this guy, and he was sending me artists. He said, holler at him, see if he wants to go. So big up B, Ayatollah, from People Under Pressure music, because he linked me with a lot of artists that were just amazing at the time. And then that morphed itself into doing Setting Standards, which originally was going to be an instrumental album on King of the Beats Records, which is a label through my brother Prick Kelsey, which is based in Birmingham. And I met Pritt through doing a beat battle, King of the Beats beat battle, which was in 2010. This is when me and Pritt met. And I met Pritt through DJ Devastate from the Demon Boys. He told me come down, get involved in the battle. So from that, when we started doing that, we agreed to kind of start a label for anybody that was making beats for the competition. We could put 45s out and stuff. And me, Devastate, and Prit put our money together and did the first few singles of that. And Prit had already had King of the Beats before that anyway. He's the main owner of it.
Yeah.
And then from that, Prit wanted me to do an instrumental album, as I said. And the original idea for Setting Standards was just an instrumental album. I had the 12 tracks, we was ready to go. And I was in Birmingham one time, we was listening to it in his car, and it was just seemed a bit boring to me. Like, I was like, this isn't exciting enough. Not that it was boring, because it's when I listen back to the instrumental albums now, they're dope.
Yeah.
But it was just it wasn't special enough for me. So I was like, yo, you know what? I want to put cuts all over this. So it's like, you sure? I said, yeah, I want to put cuts all over this. So the original first version of Setting Standards, which you can get on my Bandcamp page, actually, I think it's a free download. It might be the first thing on there. It's an album Setting Standards, but it's DJ version, right?
Yeah.
It's all the original beats that are on Setting Standards with MCs, but every single song has got cuts and scratches on it. Like, from the verse to the chorus, and it was just too... like, it just went over people's heads, basically. Like, nobody really understood it. It was too complicated, like, and I was just like, you know what I mean? So I took those beats with some of the songs that I had done with other artists before, and I said, right, what we're gonna do is I'm gonna do an album that features artists. My favorite MCs from the UK, everyone that I'm feeling right now, and get together as a collective, as like a movement, and we can all push each other and promote each other, and I'll feel comfortable doing it because it will be on all my production, so I'll be happy with everything that I'm pushing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's basically how Setting Standards started, from the first one.
Okay, that's dope. And you know, definitely there is a standard being set there. I'm hearing that you've done a lot, like, in a sense of producing for so much people. You've been on Itch FM. There's many layers to you see what I'm saying? And that's dope to hear. Do you see what I'm saying? And, you know, a lot of people are just like one-trick ponies and all that.
Yeah, I hear you. So sorry to butt in, but it's weird that you say that, because I feel like in the UK, it's a bit of a gift and a curse. If you can do more than one thing, like if you can rhyme, if you can make beats, if you can DJ, if you can mix your own stuff, you know what I mean? It's kind of frowned upon, like, not people hate on you, but people don't want to celebrate you as much if you do too much stuff. Like, whereas I feel like some of my favorite artists that do all of that stuff, from, you know, we can go back to Prince, you could go back to, you know, Dilla, Madlib, these artists that do everything themselves.
Yeah.
These artists are celebrated. But I find like in the UK, if you get somebody that, I don't know, just shines a little bit brighter, it's just like they don't get mentioned, or things don't get spoke about them for some reason. They get, I don't know, they don't get celebrated.
I feel that society right now, they champion not the underdog, but the minimalist. They more champion those people. You know, like, oh, it's not about winning, it's about taking part.
Right.
I think it's that sort of mentality. So, but yeah, here on Verbal Vortex, obviously everybody gets a chance to speak and air their views and their ideas. But what I'm trying to do is pinpoint and highlight certain individuals. Right. And that's across all platforms. You know, whatever in the culture, music, agriculture, architecture, whatever you're doing, that is great. And I think that people need to be paying attention to. This is what this is for, and this is the reason why you're on here and we're speaking about Setting Standards, because it's something that I feel a lot of people should know.
Oh, respect, man.
But yeah, moving on to like collaborations now. This album features many talented artists. How did you choose the artists to collaborate with, and what was the process like? Okay.
It was pretty easy, to tell you the truth. I knew who I wanted to work with. A few of the artists that are already on Setting Standards I have working relationships with. So right. Yourself, Point Black, J-Man I have a little bit of a working relationship with, G-Bag as well. Like, some of the artists have got more than one song on the album. Right. So like yourself, you got 2, G-Bag's got 2, J-Man's got 2. These are artists that were mainly in my camp. Point Black's got 2. These are like main artists that were in my camp that I've done other tracks with that people haven't heard, or my main plan was to do an album with every single artist, as we're talking about features, but it just hasn't happened.
Right.
And I don't know why it hasn't happened. I wish it would have happened sooner, because on the way to come meet you, I was thinking about this, like, because I'm getting older now, and because life gets in the way, I used to make beats every single day. Like, my MPC was always on, or whatever beat machine I was using, and I would be making beats constantly. Now, I find it quite hard to turn my MPC on. I have to think, this track needs to get done, or I need to make a beat for this person, and then I will go and do it and do it. Whereas before, I used to be making beats every day, and then I used to have, like, libraries. When we first met, when you used to come to my studio, we could sit down and I would just play you beats for ages, and you'd be able to pick, I like that one, nah, not that one, and then you'd go away with beats. But that's because I used to make beats every day. Now, like, I don't have that stash anymore. All of those beats have been used up, setting standards, or in our album, or on my own solo albums, or whatever. So now I'm just making stuff when I go to the studio, and it's annoying me, because I want to make a point of, in 2025, to get back on making beats all the time. So I have just beats there, not just so because they need to be done, right? And the features are a big part of that, because I wanted to do an album with everybody, and we still hopefully can do an album with everybody, and do it that way, because I'm not a business-minded person. This is another thing. Like, I think a lot of musicians will relate to this, right? Is I'm very passionate about music. I love music. I study music. Like, I listen to music all day in my house. I have thousands of records that I study who produced and where they was produced and who plays on the music. You know what I mean? I'm very like a librarian like that, right? So what I wanted to do was make albums with everyone, like I said it does, and it's just like sometimes it just doesn't happen that way, but hopefully it will still happen, you know what I mean? But the features, as we're getting back to the features, it was very easy to do the features. I knew who I wanted to work with. Everybody more or less on Setting Standards 1 and 2 was how it was going to go originally. And then on 3 and 4, I had all other MCs that were supposed to come on. So there was supposed to be another, I think on Setting Standards there might be about like 15, 16 MCs. There was supposed to be another lot of that to do 3 and 4.
Okay, I get you.
And I sent out loads of beats. I was speaking to probably your favourite MC from the UK has a beat from me that they were supposed to be on Setting Standards, but it just didn't happen. You know what I mean? So I got to a point where after doing Setting Standards 1 and 2, and big up Global Faction, after big up Global Faction, who you introduced me to, who was doing all the videos for me, and we was working at a mad rate at that time, you know what I mean? And knocking out the videos every month, releasing it, was just on it. Global Faction, big up Abdul, big up Global Faction, one of the best video directors and editors in the UK, without a shadow of a doubt, and I love that dude, you know what I mean? So when it came to Setting Standards 3 and 4, because I had seen how hard it was to try and get people to come do the videos, or to get to the studio, or it was just starting to be more stress than it was actually worth. I said, you know what? Let me rethink this. If I'm going to do Setting Standards 3 and 4, let me reimagine the album for a second, right? Because it was always going to be, I had a 5-year plan for Setting Standards. This is what I wanted to do, 5-year plan. And I wanted to do 4 albums, including the DJ album that it started with. So 5 albums altogether. And have that over the course of 5 years. But the pandemic happened, and therefore that put me back 2 years. So it's been from 2017 is when the first Setting Standards came out, December 2017, to now December 2024. 7 years these 4 projects have taken me to do over the years, right? And that's because of COVID. And it was always going to be a 5-year plan. So when it came to Setting Standards 3 and Setting Standards 4, I thought, right, let me think about this again. How about if I remix these songs with different producers, and then have it like as, you know, other producers that I'm feeling now with the MCs that I've been working with. But for me, that didn't work, because I would have got whitewashed out of my own project, because I'd only made the beats at that point. Right. So I was like, okay, that ain't gonna happen. So I was thinking, let me think about this. Let me rhyme on all the songs. let me rhyme on all the songs because everyone's already had their individual song. So if I do a remix, let me put a verse in there, totally reimagine the song so the song will be a different key, a different tempo, a totally different vibe from the original song. And therefore it's like a brand new song, but I still label it a remix. And therefore it can still be all underneath the banner of setting standards and fit into setting standards. Because I have to state this as well, my idea for setting standards has come from me growing up listening to music and being a collector of music, so buying all the Ultimate Breaks and Beats albums, buying all the Strictly Breaks albums from America, buying all the Street Sound electro albums or Upfront or anything to do with Street Sounds compilations that was in the UK, because that was the only way of us really getting any of the American 12s. I didn't have no money. I used to have to buy records when it was my birthday or do whatever, and you know what I mean? Like everybody did. But our main way of getting those records was all the electro albums. So from Electro 1 through to I think 22. I had a few of them. I've bought all of them now over the years. I didn't have all of them then. But as a collector, I wanted to have something that people could collect like that. So every single single that is with an artist has its own cover, its own color, its own concept, but it all fits underneath the same umbrella, so they can all be side to side with each other, but different. You know what I mean? Right? So that's what led to 3 and 4. Me doing a verse on it, reimagining the song, remixing it. And then obviously I was able to keep the visuals that we did before, the ones that I did with Global Faction, not having to worry about shooting another 20 videos again. You know, getting to a point where, you know, we've got technology now where you can have your camera. If you know how to set up shots or you're able to light things properly, and again, salute to Global Faction, because working with him and seeing them lot work, that showed me how you can do certain shots and, you know what I mean, set things up and, you know what I mean? So it's a continuation like that. So I was able to do it like that and then continue for 3 and 4 like that. And then to continue again, because obviously now the project's come to an end, I got a little idea in my brain of going back to before I did 3 and 4 and having all my favourite producers from the UK, i.e. Michael Parkinson, Yellow Point, you know what I mean, Chairman Math, the list goes on and on. I can name so many producers that, Tom Caruana, too many producers that are super dope in the UK, and then give them the setting standards 3 and 4, so with me and you rhyming on it, then let them produce it, and then it's setting more standards because it's not my beats no more, it's just us rhyming on it, showcasing another producer from the UK setting standards again. So hopefully I'll be able to do that.
That sounds dope.
You know what I mean? So yeah, that's where the features come from.
Yeah, man, that's dope, man. Yeah, there's a lot of artists on there, a lot of well crafted artists. Yeah, and it is refreshing to, because I'm a person, I like to hear. I've got this saying I always say to people. I see artists like certain caliber of artists. I see them like the Avengers. You know, on their own, they're super dope. But when you put them all together on something, you create something amazing. Hence the setting standards. All right, so production style. Since you produce every track on this album, can you describe your production style and how it has evolved throughout the setting standard series?
That's a good question again, because some of the beats that are on setting standards I made over 30 years ago. See? And that's older than my son is. You know what I mean? My eldest son is 30. There's some of the beats like G-Bag, B-A-G, I can tell you, was made like about 27 years ago. Lady Sanity, the original version of that was made like nearly 30 years ago. So there are quite a few beats on the album that are very old, right?
Timeless beats, bro.
Right, this is the thing. But because I've always had my sound, I've always known how I wanted my music to sound, and I've never wanted to clone anyone or yeah, you can say, you know that I'm influenced by Dilla, you know I'm influenced by Pete Rock, you know I'm influenced by Premier, like everybody. And you can hear that in my cuts, you can hear that in my beats, but when you put my music on, you know it's the force.
Right.
You know what I mean? Right. And I think that's one little thing that's missing from this generation at the moment, because people of our generation, like, I'm nearly 50 now, I'm going to be 50 next year, yeah? So the generation after us had nobody kind of laying a foundation to say, you know what, there's rules to this thing, like, and it's all good if you want to be different and everything and do your differences, but don't muddy up the water of hip hop, right? And I feel like at the moment there's so many people that are considered to be hip hop that ain't hip hop to me. They're not hip hop. They shouldn't be. They may be urban music, or they make, I don't know, like pop hip hop or R&B, whatever, but it's not hip hop. You know what I mean? And as a UK hip hop artist, it's frustrating because our scene is so small and so tiny that probably between me and you and a few of the other artists that we know in the UK, we all buy each other's music. We all support each other.
That's right.
You know what I mean? And unfortunately, outside of that circle, there are no new people that are buying our music. It's just the same people, because that generation wasn't about sharing or collecting music. Like now, like my kids, I got teenage kids. They just listen to their music streaming. They got it on their phone. If their phone run out, they wouldn't be able to get them tunes or have them anywhere to listen to.
Yeah.
They have to rely to being on Wi-Fi. I got iTunes and music in my house that when everything goes down, I can listen to that anytime I want. And that's missing from music now.
Yeah.
So it's like, again, that generation was lost of people of saying there's rules to this. Like, this is how it's supposed to be. If you're down with this, you do it properly. And these are the rules to this thing. But then everybody started coming up in the Channel U era. And then there was a lot of youths that came up that started making it okay to be, I don't want to say it, commercial or popular or sell out. Make your music a little bit more commercial in order to rise the bar and do it. And then it got worse and worse and worse. And now, for me, the people that are labelled hip-hop artists in the UK don't represent anything to do with what we're about. And I feel like the setting standard situation is UK hip-hop.
Yep.
We got artists in the UK that are UK hip-hop.
Yeah.
We got Michael Parkinson, Jest. You got, you know, Joker Star. You got Cyclonius. You got The Force. You got G-Bag. You got so many artists in the UK that are fire. But then when they talk about UK hip-hop, they talk about Stormzy and Gets and Central C. Like, these artists are not hip-hop music. So that's where it starts getting horrible for artists like us. And I get frustrated about it because we don't, UK hip-hop, original UK hip-hop artists don't get no props here from the new generation. And unfortunately, in our time, we was heavily influenced by American culture.
Right.
Like, growing up, I was heavily influenced by American culture, as well as UK culture, as well as reggae, as well as, you know, loose ends, R&B, soul to soul. We was influenced by all of that stuff, right? And then it got to a point where American culture got a bit corny, and the young kids, they didn't want to listen to that no more. So they looked at home for music. And then the essence of what we are about, the original essence of the hip hop, just got lost. Yeah. So now it's just not what it was. And my whole thing with setting standards is trying to, when I'm gone, when I'm you know, my music will live on after I'm gone, right? I want somebody in 30, 40, 50 years time to go back and listen to this stuff and say, this was UK hip hop. This is what it standed for. And then they'll put something else and say, nah, that's not, it's dope, but that's not UK. And that's what I want to do. I want to bring it back to UK acts getting props for doing the stuff that they do. Nobody, that doesn't happen anymore. Yeah. Like, you know, and we're from a point, getting back to that, we're from a point where, we're at a point, where you can put your music out yourself, do it yourself, and if it's amateur, it doesn't even matter. I'm from a time where you had to have a certain level of music in order for labels or anybody to even sniff you out, for you to even get your music out, for you to even get on the radio. You know what I mean? Yeah. We're at a point now where radio doesn't even matter. Like, and that breaks my heart because I used to listen to radio. I love doing my radio shows. I know there's DJs that still do that to a good level, right? But unless you're involved in that radio show, you're not going to listen to it. Unless your music is played on it or you're involved somehow, you're not going to listen to it. It's not like it used to be back in the days. And that's annoying and frustrating for somebody like me that's a full independent artist that knows that if it got the support, we'd be able to do something out of this. Yeah, I hear you. Worldwide. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Represent properly for the UK.
That's right.
Because there's enough room for everybody. I just don't want the lines to be drawn in like blurred anymore. Like, you know, people say to me, "Oh, you make old school hip hop." Like, what the hell does that mean?
I've never understood that, because I'm saying, how can I make old school music when I've made it right now? Music, like, you wouldn't. It's hip hop. It's hip hop. Yeah. What I mean by it's hip hop, like, if you had a rock artist making music, they wouldn't turn around and say, "You're making rock from rah rah rah." It would just be dope music to the whoever's listening to it. They'll say, "Oh, that's a dope tune." But in hip hop, there's too much. There's too much people in there, I reckon, that are putting their 5 or 10 pence in,
right,
and labeling things when
yeah,
they have
too many opinions.
They have no place to do
Yeah,
that.
too many opinions nowadays. Like, too many people willing to you know, force their opinions on other people that might not even be, like, listen, there's different strokes for different folks, innit, right? All you got to find is your like-minded people. When you find your like-minded people, that's all that matters. The people that are not like-minded like you, they're not that they don't matter, because they do, because it would be dope if they can embrace your music and like it in some way, but they're not important. And we're in a point now where everybody feels that everyone is important. When I post something or I put something out, I want everyone to like it. And if you don't like it, people get offended by that. But there's people out there, there's stuff that I like and there's stuff that I don't like, but I'm allowed to have that opinion. You can't be upset with me because I don't like everything. Because I don't like everything that you do if I don't like it. You know what I'm saying? And that's where we're at the moment. I don't expect everyone to like everything I do, but I like everything I do. And that's all that matters. So everybody should be at a point in time where, yeah, do what you want to do if that's what you like, but don't, like, blur the lines. Like, let's keep it real here. We make hip hop music. It's down sample based, 2 turntables and a microphone, paying homage to all the music that came before us, from reggae to jazz to R&B to rock to folk music to any kind of music you can put into hip hop if it's dope. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I feel like the next generation, we need somebody to inspire some kids to want to go back to being like that, because we got the great still. We got the Pete Rock still making music, just done an album with Common. For me, one of the best albums of the year, but I will say this on here now, and people probably won't like me for it. And Pete Rock is my favorite producer of all time. He inspired Dilla. Like, let's not get it twisted. Dilla wasn't inspired by Pete Rock. Dilla wouldn't sound the way he did if it wasn't for Pete. Right. But I expected more from the Common and Pete Rock album. There's joints on there that are amazingly dope. Like, but as a whole project, this is Common, my favorite MC, and Pete Rock, my favorite producer. And I was a little bit disappointed. Still my favorite album of the year. Or let's get into now LL Cool J and Q-Tip's album.
Oh, right. I haven't even heard that properly.
Right.
I've only heard a few songs.
Again, mad excited about it. On paper, you're going to... I was not feeling the album, but it's different strokes for different folks.
Why was that?
What I mean?
Sonically, wasn't it doing something for you?
Lyric-wise, LL is dope. The beats for me. It's the beats for me. And people are not going to agree. Look, everything's partial, innit? Like, what I like, other people don't like. But I've got thousands of records and I studied this music. And I'm a Tribe Called Quest fan. There are people that I see that like the last Tribe Called Quest album, the very last one, which to me sounds nothing like the 4 albums before that. I didn't like the last Tribe album. Okay. No disrespect, it's just me, right? Then Q-Tip produced for Danny Brown. The stuff he done for Danny Brown is amazing. The same kind of beats as the LL album, but they're not like the LL album. So I was disappointed. Okay. Because for me, these guys are the ones that are inspiring the new cats. And if we're just still inspiring each other, what's the point in that? We need to be inspiring. Otherwise, you know, once Pete Rock gets to a level, we're still going to be listening to all of his stuff. But where's the next Pete Rock? Where's the little Pete Rock?
I hear you.
That's like, I love what this dude's done, and I'm just going to take that whole essence of what he's doing and make it my stuff. That's what hip hop is about. You know what I mean? To go off on a rant, I don't even know why we got to this, how we got off on this, done.
Well, we was talking about we was talking about production style, you know, and about you producing every track on the album and your style evolving.
Yeah, I've been lucky as well, because you know, give thanks. My dad my dad was involved in reggae music from a very young age. So I've always been around session musicians, rehearsal studios. My dad did backing vocals for Loose Ends for quite a few years. So I used to go to rehearsals for Loose Ends and stuff with my dad. And then he was involved in a studio. He was in a reggae band from the UK called Tribesman. In the late 70s, early 80s. And there was a whole group of musicians, a guy called Paget King, Marcus Birch, my dad, Rico, who was the guitar player. But all of these guys were in a band together. And then Marcus Birch, who was my dad's best friend, he built a studio in Wood Green called Greenwood Studios. And it was like a community hub where everybody used to come there. Anybody that was doing stuff like, when I was a kid, we had Demon Boys in there. Mary Rose used to record all her stuff in there, like Love and Devotion was recorded there. Jack Rubin and the Riddler, I know nothing, I lie, Moss was something. All them tunes was done there.
Yeah.
So me as a kid, I used to go to the shop for all these artists and get to keep the change and be, so I was always around great songwriters and music being made. So that kind of just went into me naturally. Then my mum was a very big muso, like into Motown and Studio One, and you know, predominantly more black music than white, but she was also into Beatles, stuff like that. But Studio One, Motown, my mum all the time. My dad was a Rasta, he was into roots reggae music, so that's how I was brought up, right? And then I had my uncle Gordon, who was into like jazz fusion, funk, and then he liked hip hop as well. Like he bought the first EPMD album, and I'd go to his house and go listen to it at his house, and you know what I mean? So I had all of these people around me that had loads of record collections, and I was able to just go and take their records and listen to them, study them, sample them if I wanted to. This is before I even had any equipment, right? So I had all these people around me, and then coming up, I got introduced to Ronin through my uncle Gordon, who was friends with Ronin. And I said to my uncle at 13, I said, yo, I want to be able to make music. I've got these songs that I've written, you know, but I don't really know how to get them out. He said, look, I know some people, let me go and introduce you to them. So he took me down there, and I rhymed for this guy Sketch, who was in a group called Lynx. He used to be in a group called Lynx with David Grant. They were really big in the 80s as well. And he was the bass player for 23 Skidoo for Ronin. And I remember just recording, he was making a beat. I remember recording my rhyme and that. And it was dope and everything. It was just me, him and my uncle in the studio. Then a couple of days later, my uncle called me, said, yeah, Ronin want you to come back. And then the rest was basically history. After that, every weekend from my age, from 13, I was going to Highbury and Islington where their studio was and learning how to use samplers, mix stuff, all of this stuff, right? So Ronin was a very heavy influence on me. So I'd already had my dad's situation with Mark's studio, Greenwood Studios. Then I went to Ronin.
Right.
So by this time now, I'm just being an MC. I'm not a producer. I'm just learning equipment. Yeah. Ronin were the guys that used to make the beats. I used to just bring them my samples, what I wanted to use, and they helped me put, and you know, they were the producers, right? Yeah. So I learned off of them. And then through that situation, we got signed. Ronin got signed first to Virgin, and then Force and KZ after that got a deal through Ronin having a deal. And that went on till like the early 90s. Only a couple, we was like signed for a year. We made an album and everything, but we didn't like the way the label was treating us. We didn't want to do it. It's just normal politics, not how the label was treating us. Like they wanted us to water down our music. They wanted us to do more songs that would be more commercially viable. Normal story. And therefore it's a bit of a clash, you know what I mean? Not to say we wouldn't have done it, because Ronin's music was very universal. Like, that's one thing I loved about them guys as a collective. Like, their music was so dope. Like, you couldn't deny it. It was undeniable, but it had that crossover feel, and it was just a little bit bigger than, you know, the normal thing, you know? Right. So being involved with that was good with me. And then when that came to an end, I started working at Greenwood Studios as an engineer. So by this time I'd learned equipment, I knew how to make music and everything, and then I was engineering for like my dad when he'd come in, recording vocals for Mary Rose, Jack Rubin, whoever was basically at the studio at that day, because I was so on it. Never got paid or nothing, but I was on it, you know what I mean, all the time. So from that, again, working with mad singers, songwriters, musicians, and just sopping it all up, right?
Yeah.
And then through that now, through my Uncle Gordon again, he brought an artist called Noel McCoy, rest in peace, to a great soul, super influential soul singer, Mr. Noel McCoy. He did a song called Family, is his biggest hit. People know who Noel McCoy is. But I met him through my Uncle Gordon, and he took me to a studio called Hit and Run Publishing, which was his publishers at the time.
Yeah.
And that was a publishing company that was run by Peter Gabriel, Phil Collins, Genesis at the time, the name of the group was, right? So I kind of got in there, and Noel, I was producing some songs for Noel, and we started working together. He introduced me to Hit and Run Publishing, and then Give Thanks. This is when things started to move for me. I became like the in-house engineer at Hit and Run Publishing, right? So that was through Noel McCoy. And I was working with an artist called Amani, who's now in Incognito, Jeffrey Williams. They was doing songs for like, what's the big song contest? What's the big song contest that goes on in Europe? It's every year.
Which one? Euro?
No, there's every year, man. The Eurovision Song Contest.
Yeah, that's what I'm
so
saying,
yeah.
yeah.
So they was writing songs that would be put in for that.
Right.
You know what I mean? I was engineering all this stuff. And then at that time, I met this guy called Russell Nash. He was signed to the publishers. And I was just engineering for these. And they never knew I produced. They never knew I made beats or nothing. But just one day, don't know what it was, Russell heard one of my beats. I might have been doing something before he came in the studio. He was like, "What, you made that?" I said, "Yeah." He's like, "If I ever do anything, I'd like you to produce some stuff for me." And this is where I got to this. I've never been business minded, right? So I'm a musician at heart. So I've always given my music away for free done. I always give people beats for free. I always do things for free. Oh, you need your song mixed? Of course, yeah, I'll mix it for you for free. I've always been like that done. I don't know why I'm like that, but I'm like that. And I can't change it. I'm just not good with business. Right? So I met Russell, and then from that, we created a band called Nash. He was the main singer, which was like a Jamiroquai kind of thing. We got signed to Polydor. We had a 6-piece band with us. It was the best time of my life. Like, I'm talking about, if I needed live bass, horns, strings, trumpets, keyboards, anything, I could call up any of the members of that was affiliated with the crew.
Yeah.
And I swear to you, Dan, any of these people trusted me so much that we just come to the studio, I play them the song, I wouldn't even have to tell them what to play or not, and people would just play exactly what's supposed to be on there, because the vibes at that time was just perfect. Everyone was in sync, you know what I mean? And I thought that was my golden ticket time, Dan. I thought, this is it. We're on our way, you know what I mean? Like, I had Leo Cohen, the owner of Def Jam, wanted to come to my house to meet me and Russell while we're making music in the studio. I was like, it's on.
Yeah, you guys.
You know what I mean?
What's going on here?
But, again, got signed to Polydor. The label didn't really know how to sell our music. I think we did about 40,000 units, which is an amazing amount of records to sell. We saw no money or nothing from it. It's a normal story, you know what I mean? So that put me off of doing stuff with major labels, because I'd had quite a few situations with majors where you get a little bit of money, but nothing comes out of it, right? So, leading off of that, the industry kind of messed the group up. The group kind of disbanded. Russell went and set up a music academy in Spain. So he was teaching kids how to make music, and we still made music over the years. But from that, I was like, after that disbanded, I was like, you know what? I'm just focusing on doing hip hop now. Like, this was my meal ticket. Like, I felt like we was gonna go somewhere. We didn't. I'm just concentrating on doing hip hop. I'm not letting anything interfere with that. Not to say that when I was doing Nash, it wasn't hip hop, because as a producer, we come back to that again. If I'm involved in anything, whether it's R&B, whatever, you're gonna hear hip hop elements in it, because I'm a hip hop producer. My whole mind state, like the whole Nash band thing, was all live instruments, but we would sample it like it was me sampling records, and I was able to produce it like it was hip hop, but it was all live. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so from that, I wanted to just do hip hop, and my production style is an amalgamation of all these things that I've just spoken about, because I'm like a sponge. I just get inspired by but greatness. And then when I see that greatness, it just inspires me to be like, I don't know, man. It just goes through. It's not even thought about. It just happens. It's just a weird one. You know what I mean?
Like a conductor, you absorb.
It's just weird.
Release, yeah.
Like, don't have writer's block. Never not been able to make a beat. Like, I give thanks for that. Honestly, done. Like, because I don't overthink it. It just happens. It's a weird one. And that's why the way I make beats is the way I make beats. And because of my influences, which we talked about, like, and it's bigger than hip hop influences. We're talking about Cox and Dodd from Studio One. We're talking about, you know, all Stevie Wonder's music, Sarita Wright, you know what I mean? We're talking about Oscar Peterson. We're talking about artists that through hip hop music, this is another thing as well. This is through hip hop music. So through being a lover of hip hop music, that opened me up to learning about so many different musics, because once I heard Dilla had sampled someone, or what's that Tribe used? I had to get, like, in my early teens, I had to get all the samples that Tribe Called Quest had. That was my thing. Like, I need to find where these samples have come from. And then when you start doing that, you find the artist, then the label, then you find other artists that sound like them, or the musicians that are playing on that record or on these records. So before you know it, it opens up a whole pool of so much music done, and it's never ending. Still to this day, I'm never not discovering new music every single day. And it's another thing that's missing from this time. All the new music that I'm discovering to this day, as well as new shit, is like stuff from the 60s. Like jazz that I didn't know about. Like Alice Coltrane albums that I didn't know about. Or Oscar Peterson doing a classical jazz album, which right now is my genre. Classical jazz is where it's at, let me tell you. Like Oscar Peterson doing Bach in jazz, it's the illest. Mark my words, I'm going to do an album dedicated to that kind of sound. And it's not going to be classical. It's not going to be classical. It's going to be hip hop, how my stuff is, but with those kind of chords, that kind of sound, because that music to me is where it's at. And again, all of that is a spiral out of just being a purist from hip hop. Like, it's hip hop that makes me that way. Though.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then going back to just being around artists that, you know, like when me and you work, it's just so natural. Like, and if you say to me, I'm not really feeling that, or I say to you, I'm not really feeling that, like, it's not, and we just move forward and keep doing it. Some artists can't do that. Some artists get quite offended, like me as a producer, when I say, no, I'm not feeling that. Like, then artists are getting disheartened and don't want to work with me again because of that. You know, but that's not what being a producer is about, because for me, every single song I've ever been involved with, whether it's from 1989 when I was 16 years old and I put the needle on that record or I press play, I'm proud of that piece of music, though.
Right.
There's nothing in my whole discography that makes me go, I wish I didn't do that. And what's crazy about that as well is I've got stories like, again, when I was a teenager, people coming from Germany and Austria and places like that to come offer me things. Like, people offered me I had 3 different deals offered to me to be like in a group like Technotronic.
Okay.
So they're saying, come to Germany, we'll pay you, you're gonna get produced and everything, you just be rhyming on this stuff, it's gonna blow, it's gonna do this, it's gonna do that. I'm like, I'm a hip hop purist, I ain't doing that. You know, I ain't doing that. And there's no way I could ever be like that. Like, and sometimes I feel like that limits me financially, but I couldn't be any other way. Like, I'll give you an example. I explained to my daughter, she was saying to me, his music isn't the best, Dad, but you produce better than him. You should be getting paid like will.i.am. You should be doing stuff. You should be producing for Britney Spears, or like Pharrell did for, you know, Justin Timberlake. And I'm like, you know what, Eves? I could produce for those people, but I probably wouldn't be happy with it. So what's the point in me doing that?
This is it.
Like, I have to do stuff, like, and I can guarantee you, I might be wrong, but I know will.i.am's music, I know he's a dope producer. He did an ill album for BBE. Big up BBE Records. That's another label we should talk about. I got an album on their label as well, For the Beat Generation, which will.i.am did an album for. Pete Rock, Jay Dilla, King Britt, Larry Gold, Jazzy Jeff. oh my gosh, the list goes on, and I'm the only UK artist that's involved in the Beat Generation.
That's right.
No one ever talks about my Beat Generation album.
That's mad.
No one ever talks about it. Like, yo.
That's mad.
Like, yo, like that, and I don't understand why. You know what I mean? Because that's a big achievement for a UK artist to be involved in a series like that.
In a catalogue with all those names,
Right.
it is a big achievement.
But unless I mention it, people are like, oh yeah. Like, you know, it's frustrating. And I don't want to sound bitter. I could come across as a bitter, you know, old man, whatever, but I know what I like and I know what needs to be done for this music, and I'm so passionate about hip-hop music, like I always have been done my whole life from when I was a youth. You know what I mean? That I wanna inspire somebody so we could keep the ball rolling, because this music thing is spiritually great. It does. We don't want it to die out.
That's right.
You know what I mean? So yeah.
No, well, bro, that's what I'm saying. But then that's why it makes sense that the album is called Setting Standards, bro. Because, you know, I'm very deep into conceptual stuff, and you know, I like things to, even when I write lyrics, like even when the bar hasn't even reached to the end to rhyme it, I'm trying to make these two words rhyme and connect before it gets to that. So I'm very much more into things making sense, and it just makes sense with what you just said. Makes sense why the album is called Setting Standards, because you're trying to set a standard.
Not only me, but just for me, all the artists that are on the album are setting standards within their self as well. You know what I mean?
No, definitely that is the case, but it's coming under your vision, because each of these artists have their own album and projects, and they're trying to spearhead whatever they're trying to get out to the people. But under your banner, you know, album's called Setting Standard, and it's got all of the true elements of authentic hip hop to me, like, you know, the boom bap type feel, the
sample bass,
the samples, the cuts, even the songs that people are rapping about and all that. It's very specific to me,
I hear you.
I think it's dope.
Yo, what's outside is within. The mind regulates the hand that masters the pen. The pen is mightier than the sword, but the tongue is mightier still. The stargate to the mind's revealed. The vortex.